Hello, thank you so much for joining me. Today we're talking about how to plan your practice time at the piano. And basically this is going to boil down to two key elements. I want you to be thinking about the goals that you want to achieve and the amount of time that you have to invest on a regular basis. And then how you can make those two things work together. We can talk about this on a lot of different scales. If we're thinking more on a micro scale of what do I want to practice today, then I would start with the amount of time that you have to invest, because you usually have an idea of, oof, today I can only practice like 15 minutes. I don't have more. My day is crazy busy. I know I don't have the time or the concentration to do more than that. And then if it's something like that you're really up against the wall, you don't have a lot of time, then you need to be thinking about, okay, what can I actually accomplish with this time? How can I use this time to get the most out of it? Then the time is going to be kind of your determining factor. If we're thinking more on a macro scale, like you're thinking of you want to give an entire concert on your own, for example, then you need to be thinking about when that's going to happen and how many pieces you're going to be playing, and then think about how much time you have to invest on a regular basis, and from there set the date of your recital. Or if the recital is already determined, then you're going to have to find ways to get the most out of your time so that you can make your goals a reality. These two things are always going to be working hand in hand. Whether it's short-term, mid-term, long-term, they are always things that we need to be considering together. It's something we're going to talk about a lot more in detail in the weeks and months to come. I am a huge proponent for learning how to practice effectively. I personally learned these things shockingly late, and I've kind of made it my mission to make sure that other people don't fall into the same trap that I fell into. I don't think my time was wasted. I think I was able to spend a lot of time doing the wrong things and practicing the wrong ways so that I could learn things the hard way and save you all of that pain and suffering and tell you what does work and how you can get the most out of your time. Once you've decided what your goals are and the time frame that you're dealing with, then you need to get some clarity on which elements you want to incorporate into your practicing. I'm going to break this down on a few scales for you because, of course, it all depends on the amount of time that you have to invest on a regular basis. If you have an hour or 2 hours a day, then there are a lot of things that we can make sure you're building into your practice time every single day so that you're really developing well-rounded skills. That's not to say that you have to practice an hour or 2 hours a day or even more. Of course, if you want to and you have the time, go for it. The more time you spend at the piano, the quicker you're going to develop your skills. Like I said, lots more coming on that in the next weeks and months, but for now we're just speaking kind of generally. Let's say that right now, in this phase of your life, you're really pressed for time. You only have 15 minutes a day to dedicate to practicing piano. Great. It's much more useful to spend consistent, smaller amounts of time than it is to practice once a week for a big chunk and then have the pressure of needing to practice hanging over you every single day. You carry it throughout the week. You get ready, it's the day before your lesson, and you're just sitting there like, oh, I haven't practiced, I haven't touched the piano all week, and now I have to practice for 2 hours. We don't want that kind of pressure. We want to learn how to develop these consistent practice habits. But then the question is, how do you spend those 15 minutes a day? The essential part of learning piano that we cannot take away, if we're just boiling it down to the bare minimum, we need to be learning pieces. We need to be learning pieces because with every single piece that we learn, we're learning something new about rhythm and about fingering and about notes and about reading music and about moving around the piano, and we're constantly adding to our musical vocabulary. This isn't necessarily always a conscious process, but it is always happening. We learn something from every single piece that we learn at the piano. So then you decide, okay, I'm going to invest my time in learning pieces. I don't have a lot of time to spare, I'm going to learn pieces. Which pieces do I learn? Ideally, in a perfect world, you would always have at least 3 pieces going on. And what those should be, I want you to have something old. I want you to have something that you can sit down at the piano and play without thinking. Because that's when playing piano really becomes magical. When we just sit down, we turn off our thinking brain, we turn off our critical brain, and we just enjoy the music and make the music. It's the best feeling in the world. It's so fulfilling for your soul, and I wish that for everyone who plays the piano, that they have at least one piece all the time ready that they can sit down and play and know that, that's the good stuff. Then I want you to have something new that you're working on. Not necessarily a big piece, but just something always new that you're learning, because like I said before, you're learning something new from every piece that you learn. Whether it's a hard piece or an easy piece, it doesn't matter. Every single piece of repertoire that we learn is building our musical vocabulary. It's building different skills for us. And best case scenario, you have some sort of flex piece or stretch piece that really pushes your boundaries. It's something that's when it's clear to you that you're learning something new. Even with easy pieces that are really manageable, that are short, that you don't have to think too much about when you're in the process of learning them, we're learning things. But with these flex pieces, that's when you really notice that you're learning something new, that you're really developing new skills. And if you're really pressed for time, it might be hard to learn a piece like that. But even if, let's say just hypothetically, that you really maxed out at 15 minutes a day, how do you approach practicing then? If you have these 3 things and one of them is really hard and one of them is brand new, how do you structure your practice time? There are a couple of ways you can go about this. You can either start with the old piece, because that's what's comfortable, that's what's easy to get to the piano, because really the biggest thing, if you know that you're pressed for time, is just making sure that you show up. And we want that barrier to entry to be as low as possible. So if you want to practice and you feel this urge to practice, but then you have this resistance of, no, but not that hard piece, I don't want to work on the hard piece, it's too much, I'm too tired, I don't want to do it, then start with the one you love, right? Start with the one that you don't have to think about, that you can just sit down and play it. Play through that as many times as you want, and if that takes up the entire 15 minutes, okay, then you didn't learn something new today, but you played the piano and you enjoyed it, and that's the foundation that we want to be laying if we're really pressed for time. That the music is still there for us, we're still enjoying it, we're still growing, we're still in this musical world. Okay, that's one option. Or maybe you're an eat the frog type of person. Then you're going to start with the new flex piece and you're going to really stretch those muscles, you're going to work as hard as you can, and maybe you set a timer and you say 5 minutes, whatever I get done in 5 minutes is what I do. And I work through one chunk and I've made progress. I'm still going to make 5 minutes of progress every single day on this really tricky piece. Then set a timer for another 5 minutes and you work through the new smaller piece. It's not as stressful as the flex piece, but you're still learning things, you're still working, you're still concentrated. And then once those 5 minutes are over, then go to your old piece. Then just kind of settle in, and that's your reward for the hard work that you've put in. Does it have to be the same pattern every single day? Not necessarily. If you're a type of person who really likes routine and you notice that you show up better if you have a fixed routine, then yeah, you're probably going to want to stick to the same ritual more or less. But also know yourself and listen to yourself and listen to your needs on any given day and show up in the way that works best for you. Now, what if you have more time? What if you have half an hour or an hour? Or what if you have as many hours as you want to dedicate in a day? Great. You're still going to learn those pieces. I still want you to be kind of checking the same boxes. Old piece, maybe a couple. Maybe you have time for more than one and you have mental space to hold more than one old piece in your brain too. Super. Work on as many old pieces as you want. Then of course, you're going to be wanting new pieces that are challenging enough but not crazy. And then at least one flex piece. If you really have a lot of time to dedicate, then maybe you want 2. More than that might be overwhelming. But if you're checking those 3 boxes with whatever the quantities are, you're going to be moving forward and you're going to have assignments that you really love at the piano. Then on top of that, I want you to be doing at least one additional skill every day that supports your learning, that's kind of rounding out the skills that we're learning through the pieces. It might be sight reading every single day. That's such a valuable skill. Or it might be practicing your scales and making sure that you're really familiar with the keys that you're playing in and the harmonies that you should be expecting in those pieces. It might be developing your ear and working on learning a few things by ear and not always having to rely on having a score in front of you. Or practicing memorizing things, or working on technical exercises. If you feel like you have certain gaps in your technique and you want to be improving that area. Choose at least one of those categories to work on every single day and really do it consistently. If you choose 2 or 3, that's maybe even better. Just in small doses. They don't have to be huge things that you're covering in each of those categories. And then the third point, that is kind of going back to point 1 also, is just work on something that you love. Maybe you love improvising, and so it's not necessarily an old piece that you're playing through, but just make sure that you're carving out time when you're practicing to do something that you love, that you sit down and you think, yeah, this is why I play piano. And if you consciously incorporate all of those elements into your practicing, you're going to really have a clear path forward and know exactly where you're heading with your music. So to recap really fast, when you're planning your practice sessions, I want you to think about goals, whether it's long-term or short-term, and think about the amount of time that you're committing to, whether it's your daily practice goal or whether you're talking about how much you want to do in a week or a month or a year or when you have a recital, whatever. Those are the 2 kind of guiding elements when you're deciding what to practice. Those are our 2 guideposts that we need to have really clearly laid out. And then from there, I want you to think about which pieces you're working on. We need something old, new, and flex. And then if you have the time, I want you to have at least one additional skill that you're working on a consistent basis. Whether it's sight reading, scales, technique, playing by ear. The list can go on and on and on, and if you have suggestions or questions or whatever, drop it in the comments and I'll be sure to get back to you. And then the third thing is every single practice session, make sure you're doing something that you love. Make sure that you have something that you sit at the piano and you think, oh, what a great way to be spending my time. Until next time, happy practicing.